I never saw it coming. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to. 3 years. 3 years of thinking we were building something together. Of believing that the late nights, the weekend trips, the quiet dinners at home, and the lazy Sunday mornings were shared investments in a life we were supposed to grow into together. I was 29, financially stable, working at a solid job in the city, and confident in my life choices. She was 27, beautiful, ambitious in her own way, a part-time marketing assistant, living her life on her terms, or so I thought. At first, things were perfect. We laughed over cheap coffee on Sunday mornings, played video games competitively while she mocked my terrible aim, argued over what movie to watch while secretly knowing we'd end up in a blanket fort binging whatever streaming service offered free trials. Those moments were real. Those moments mattered. I told myself they mattered. But life, as it often does, doesn't stay perfect. The changes were subtle at first. A canceled date here, a last-minute excuse there. I have work late tonight, she said. Sorry, maybe next weekend, she added. I didn't notice the pattern at first. I wanted to be understanding. I wanted to be patient. I kept thinking it was just a phase, a busy week at work, stress, a little fatigue. Then the shift became undeniable. Date nights became rare. Weekend trips, once our sacred ritual, now only existed in conversation. We should save money, she said. Sex became infrequent, mechanical, almost a chore. Meanwhile, she spent hours out with her friends. Late-night girls' nights that ran until 2 in the morning. Happy hours that, conveniently, I wasn't invited to. I tried to make things work. Planned dinners, bought her favorite wine, suggested activities we used to love. She would agree, smile politely, and then cancel at the last second. I was bankrolling most of our life. Rent for the apartment was $2,400. I paid $1,500. She paid $900. Utilities, groceries, streaming subscriptions, car insurance, emergency expenses like when she had that minor accident and needed help with the deductible. I covered most of it. All told, I was dropping around $2,700 a month to maintain a lifestyle we were supposedly sharing. She earned a decent part-time salary, but always claimed she didn't have enough money. I didn't press. I didn't want to start fights over finances. Then one evening, while we were lounging on the couch, my stomach sank. I had suggested trying the new Italian place downtown, something casual, nothing fancy. Her head was buried in her phone as usual. I can't afford it, she said without looking up. I offered to pay, like always. She finally put the phone down, glanced at me, and that look, the one that made me feel like a stray dog. Trying to get attention was all I needed to understand what was coming. We need to be real about this, she said. My stomach dropped. I already felt it, the slow twist of betrayal and clarity. Like I had been blind to the obvious all along. I've been thinking about us, about what we actually are. And honestly, I don't see you as a boyfriend anymore, she continued, voice calm but firm. You're more like a roommate who pays bills. We don't have that spark. We're not romantic. We're just two people sharing space. The words hit like a cold gust of winter wind. I stared at her, processing. So, you wanted to break up? I asked, cautiously, almost afraid of her answer. God, no. Why would we? This setup works. The apartment's nice. We get along fine. We just should stop pretending this is something it's not. We're roommates, friends, not a couple. Roommates, right? She blinked at me, as though expecting relief, expecting me to agree. Yes, I said softly. Roommates. The relief on her face was instantaneous. She smiled, almost gleeful. See? I knew you'd be cool about it. You're always so understanding. Yep, I was understanding. Roommates are supposed to be understanding. I didn't say anything else. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I simply nodded. That night, as she scrolled through her phone, I went to my laptop. I opened a spreadsheet, started typing in numbers, and calculated everything down to the last cent. Rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, streaming subscriptions. All separate now. All divided evenly. I emailed it to her. Subject line, roommate expense agreement. I didn't expect her to read it immediately. She was too busy texting someone, as usual. The next morning, I poured my coffee and watched her reaction when she finally opened the email. Confusion first, then annoyance, then anger. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. "Roommate expenses? Split evenly? Seriously?" "Yes," I said, as calmly as I could. "Roommates split costs 50/50ths. That's how it works. But you make way more money than me." She cried. "Still split evenly." "That's how roommates work," I replied. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue about fairness or income disparities. I just treated her as a roommate precisely as she had requested. Her face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. I can't afford this." "Then find a cheaper place or work full-time." "Roommate solutions," I said. "Simple, logical, coldly fair." She stormed off, slammed the door. I sat down, finished my coffee, and for the first time in months, felt a sense of clarity. The rules had changed. I was no longer a doormat. I was no longer someone to be taken for granted. She wanted space, independence, freedom, perfect. I would give her exactly that. 2 weeks later, when I left the apartment for a date with someone new, her face, the one I had once adored, froze in shock. She hadn't expected that. She didn't want that. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. The best revenge isn't anger. It's letting people live with the consequences of their own choices. The morning after I sent the roommate expense agreement, the apartment was eerily quiet. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, scrolling like nothing had happened. I could feel her frustration radiating off her in waves, though she was trying desperately to hide it. "Did you read my email?" I asked casually, pouring myself a second cup of coffee. She blinked up at me, like she had just been caught off guard. I glanced at it. "Why are you making such a big deal about this?" I smiled faintly, the kind of calm smile that unsettles people because they know you mean every word you say. Because, as roommates, it's important to be clear. Boundaries matter. Everyone pays their fair share. That includes rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, streaming subscriptions. Everything. Her mouth opened, then closed. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "I can't believe you're doing this. You're being so cold." "Roommates have to be fair," I replied, sipping my coffee. "Fairness isn't cold. It's responsible." Her eyes narrowed. "But you make way more money than me. You could cover it like before. It's just money, not anymore. You asked for space. You said we weren't a couple. So, I'm treating you like a roommate," I said simply. No anger, no guilt. Just clarity. Her hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the laptop. "You're taking this way too seriously. Roommates aren't supposed to. This isn't how people do it." "Yes, it is," I said. "At least, the ones who actually respect each other." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, in the way she tapped her fingers nervously against the armrest of the couch. She tried to argue, tried to manipulate the conversation with her usual charm and guilt trips. But I remained firm. Every point she raised, I countered logically, calmly, factually. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was following the rules she had set. That night, I went to the store. I bought only my groceries and left hers untouched. When I came home, I set up a mini fridge in my room and stocked it with my food. When she came back and opened the main fridge, she froze. The shelves were empty except for a few condiments. "Where's the food?" she demanded, a note of panic creeping into her voice. I leaned against the doorway. "Roommates keep groceries separate unless there's an agreement. We don't have one." Her face twisted in disbelief. "This is insane. You're insane. You can't just do this." "I can," I said. "You wanted space. I'm respecting that. Boundaries have consequences." Over the next few days, she tried every tactic in the book, softening her voice, touching my arm, trying to act sweet and nostalgic. "Remember when we used to have fun? We could go back to that, right?" she asked one evening, wearing that blue dress she knew I liked. I shook my head. "Roommates can be friendly, but roommates don't manipulate each other." She paused, blinking, trying to gauge my reaction. Then, softly, almost pleading, "I'm not manipulating you. I miss when we had a spark. I miss having a boyfriend." I took a slow breath. "You don't have a boyfriend. You have a roommate. By choice." Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. She wasn't pretending. She hadn't expected me to take her at her word. But I didn't flinch. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't argue. I simply followed through on the agreement, living by the rules she had set. It was fascinating to watch. She had relied on me for months, financially and emotionally, assuming I would never hold her accountable. She assumed I would continue to bend, continue to cover her expenses, continue to cancel my own plans to accommodate her whims. But the moment I acted like a roommate, her carefully constructed world started to crumble. Her car insurance lapsed. She hadn't planned for that. Utilities. She couldn't cover them all. Even small things, like paying for groceries or splitting a dinner bill, became impossible. The comfortable life she had been enjoying at my expense was gone, and she had no fallback. And here's where karma started showing its face. The guy she had been spending time with, the one she had been testing, had no interest in a relationship. She thought she could juggle him while keeping me as a safety net, and she failed spectacularly. Suddenly, she was alone, financially unstable, and completely exposed her. Meanwhile, I was living my life. I went on dates, met new people, laughed, enjoyed meals, and never once worried about her reaction. Each time she saw me leave, her expression shifted from annoyance to panic to despair. I stayed calm, polite, factual. I didn't need to punish her. Her choices were punishing her already. One night, she tried to create a scene. She unplugged my phone charger, forgot to give me a package, left dishes piled in the sink, and deliberately used all the hot water. I documented everything, every action, every timestamp, every interaction. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was simply recording facts, preparing for the inevitable consequences. Then came the day she went too far. She stormed to the landlord's office, claiming harassment. I followed protocol. I explained everything. We were roommates. We split expenses evenly. I was living my life responsibly. The landlord listened, puzzled, and ultimately agreed. No violation had occurred. She left, furious and humiliated. Back at the apartment, she screamed, raged, tried every manipulation tactic again. I remained a calm, factual roommate. Roommates, I said, once, twice, every time she tried to twist the narrative. By the end of the night, she realized that no amount of pleading, crying, or anger could undo the reality she had created. She had chosen a path, one of convenience, manipulation, and exploitation, and she was experiencing the natural consequences. As I lay in bed that night, I felt an unexpected sense of satisfaction, not because I had won in the traditional sense, but because the truth had aligned with justice. She had treated me like a roommate, and now she was being treated exactly as she had asked to be treated. The karma was beautiful. The stage was set. Boundaries established. Consequences in motion. And I, finally, was free to live my life without being held hostage by someone else's selfishness. The morning light filtered through the blinds, illuminating the neat spreadsheet on my laptop. Every expense accounted for, every boundary enforced, every rule clear. I had slept well that night, an unfamiliar sense of peace settling over me. The apartment was quiet. She was out, probably meeting friends, probably stressing over the new financial reality she had created for herself. I sipped my coffee, a small smile playing on my lips. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of freedom, the kind that comes from finally standing firm and refusing to be manipulated. The next step was obvious. I needed to reclaim my life entirely, and part of that meant opening myself to the possibility of someone new, someone who respected me, someone who actually wanted to be with me. A dating app. It had been years since I last used one, but I knew it was time. I created a profile carefully, honest and deliberate. No games, no exaggerations, no lies. I uploaded photos, crafted a short but witty bio, and started swiping. Within days, I matched with someone, Elena. She was smart, independent, confident, worked in finance, loved the same obscure indie films I adored. Her messages were playful, thoughtful, and for the first time in months, completely genuine. We arranged a coffee date, a simple, casual meeting. My heart raced with anticipation. I put on a nice shirt, jeans that fit perfectly, dabbed on a light cologne, and left the apartment with a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in ages. She was waiting at a small cafe downtown, smiling as I approached. The air was warm with the scent of roasted coffee beans, and I immediately felt the tension of the past weeks begin to lift. Conversation flowed effortlessly. We laughed, shared stories, argued playfully over which city skyline was more beautiful. It was effortless, natural, comfortable. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, I knew my roommate was watching. I could almost feel the panic she would experience when she saw me leave. And sure enough, later that evening, when I returned, she was sitting on the couch, her face pale. A mix of confusion, anger, and something else, fear, perhaps, of losing control. "You're going out?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yes," I replied casually. "I have a date. With someone I actually like." Her jaw dropped. "A date, you mean? You're dating someone?" I nodded, smiling faintly. "Yes, single people date. You said we're roommates." "Roommates can date whoever they want." She froze. Her mind raced, trying to process this new reality. For weeks, she had assumed that I would remain under her thumb, financially supporting her, emotionally available, constrained by her whims. She had not anticipated this. She had not expected me to act on the boundaries she had demanded. "Wait, but you can't. You're living with me." She stammered. "Exactly," I said. "Living with me doesn't change the fact that we're roommates. You wanted space. I gave it to you. I'm living my life now." The shock on her face was almost satisfying. I left her to stew in it, heading to the bedroom to get ready for the evening. The date went better than I could have imagined. Elena was smart, funny, engaging, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. We shared stories about our childhoods, laughed at our awkward first jobs, and bonded over the small, ridiculous quirks that make people human. When I returned home late that night, the apartment was silent except for her pacing, trying to make sense of the new rules she had set and the consequences she was now facing. She had no power over me, no control. Every attempt at manipulation, every passive-aggressive remark, every pleading glance had been met with logic, facts, and unwavering calm. The days that followed were a revelation. I continued seeing Elena. We went on dinners, coffee dates, museum visits, long walks in the park. Each outing reinforced a simple truth. Relationships work when both people contribute, respect each other, and actually want to be there. Contrast that with my former girlfriend. It was almost painful how obvious the difference was. Back at the apartment, my roommate spiraled. She started leaving her things everywhere, piling laundry on chairs, scattering dishes, and even letting her friends come over late into the night. I followed the rules, documenting everything, calmly pointing out the violations. "Roommates respect shared spaces," I said once, when she tried to yell at me over a pile of clothes. Her friends showed up, confrontational and angry. "You're being unreasonable," one of them said. "She's your girlfriend." I smiled calmly. She asked to be roommates. Roommates share an apartment, split costs, respect boundaries. She is a roommate. That's the reality. Their jaws dropped. They hadn't expected me to take her at her word. They argued, yelled, tried to guilt me. I stayed factual, calm, and unflinching. Every time, repeating a single word, roommates. It was fascinating to watch her unravel. She had spent months believing she could manipulate, control, and rely on me indefinitely. She had gambled on my loyalty, assuming I would never enforce the boundaries she set. And now, every choice she had made to treat me as a convenience came back to her. Her car insurance lapsed. Utilities piled up. Grocery bills were impossible. Her attempts to get my attention, to reignite the old dynamic, failed repeatedly. And karma sweet, inevitable karma was everywhere. The guy she had been secretly pursuing didn't want a relationship. The test drive she had planned to keep options open backfired completely. She was left alone, financially unstable, and desperate, while I was free, dating someone who valued me, and finally living life on my own terms. The apartment became a minefield for her frustration, and I was simply a calm, factual presence navigating it. She screamed, slammed doors, tried manipulation, all met with logic and boundaries. Every tantrum, every act of pettiness, every attempt to guilt-trip me reinforced a truth she had chosen to ignore. If you treat someone like a roommate, don't be surprised when they act exactly like one. By the end of that week, the shift was complete. I had regained control over my life, my time, my energy, and my emotional well-being. My new relationship was blossoming. My roommate, however, was losing everything she had taken for granted. Financial stability, gone. Emotional leverage, gone. Freedom to act without consequence, gone. And the best part, I hadn't had to confront her directly or seek revenge. I hadn't yelled, hadn't schemed, hadn't even argued unnecessarily. The universe, guided by simple logic and boundaries, had done the work for me. Karma had taken its course, and I was merely observing it unfold. By the time Elena and I had our third date, my former girlfriend's panic had reached a new level. Seeing me with someone else, seeing me happy, independent, and fulfilled, it broke something inside her. She tried to control me again, tried to argue, to manipulate, to guilt trip, but I remained the same, calm, factual, consistent. Roommates. That word alone had more power than any argument, any tear, any plea. She had chosen her path. She had treated me as a convenience, a financial crutch, and an emotional placeholder. I had chosen mine, to respect my own boundaries, live honestly, and allow her choices to carry consequences. And as I lay in bed that night, smiling at the memory of the evening with Elena, I realized how simple life could be when you stopped bending to someone else's manipulation. The stage was set. Karma was in motion. The drama was escalating, and I had no intention of stepping off my path. The morning light poured through the blinds, catching the dust particles floating lazily in the air. I was making coffee, as I had done every morning since I instituted the roommate agreement. My new life had a rhythm, calm, structured, predictable in a way that actually felt liberating. And every time I opened the fridge to my own stocked mini fridge, or checked the spreadsheet of shared expenses, I was reminded that I was finally living on my terms. She, on the other hand, was spiraling. The first thing I noticed that week was her car insurance. She had assumed I would continue paying it, the same way I had covered so many other things before. But I didn't. Roommates don't pay for each other's car insurance. She had to scramble to find a solution, but with her part-time job and mounting expenses, she was already behind. The panic in her eyes was deliciously satisfying, not because I enjoyed her suffering, but because the consequences were hers alone, natural and deserved. Utilities came next. I kept my portion current, as required. I paid my rent, my share of the internet, and my grocery bills. She tried to plead, tried to hint, tried to manipulate me into covering something just this once. Each time, I repeated the mantra that had become my shield: roommates. The word hung in the air like a sword, precise and unyielding. One evening, I returned home from a date with Elena, the evening still warm with laughter and conversation, only to find her pacing in the living room, a look of pure desperation on her face. "How am I supposed to pay all of this?" she demanded, waving the bills in my direction. I set my bag down, poured myself a drink, and leaned casually against the counter. "You budget for it. You find a way. Roommates handle their own expenses." Her face turned red. "You're being so unfair. This is ridiculous. I can't do this." "Yes, you can. And you will. You chose this life. You chose to treat me like a roommate. Now you're getting exactly what you asked for." Her friends began showing up more frequently, as if sheer numbers could intimidate me. They came in loud and confrontational. "You're being a monster," one of them said. "She's your girlfriend. You can't treat her like this." I smiled faintly. "She told me we're roommates. I'm respecting that. If you want to argue, fine, but the rules were set by her. I'm simply following them." Their mouths fell open. None of them had expected me to take her literally. They argued, tried guilt trips, attempted to manipulate me. I remained calm, collected, and utterly factual. Every point she had tried to make about past generosity, shared history, emotional attachment, I countered with logic. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to beg. I didn't even have to scold. Roommates, that word, repeated calmly, controlled the room. The real blow came when she realized her financial situation was completely untenable. Rent, utilities, groceries, streaming subscriptions. Her lapsed car insurance, they added up to an impossible sum on her part-time salary. No safety net, no help, no shortcuts. She had gambled on my compliance, assuming I would keep covering her. But compliance had ended the moment she declared we were just roommates. She tried every manipulation tactic in the book. Tears, anger, passive aggression, even subtle seduction. Every strategy failed. I stayed factual, calm, unwavering. Roommates don't give exceptions. Roommates don't cover each other's mistakes. Roommates pay their share. Then came the day her desperation reached a new peak. She went to the landlord, claiming harassment, claiming that I was making her feel unsafe. I calmly presented my case. We are roommates, living together responsibly, splitting expenses. No violations, no threats, no harassment. The landlord listened, puzzled at the audacity of her claims. Ultimately, he sided with me. No lease violations, no wrongdoing. She left, furious and humiliated. Back at the apartment, she attempted another escalation. She unplugged my phone charger, forgot to give me packages, tried to occupy the entire hot water supply, and generally acted out in petty ways. I documented every single incident, dates, times, what occurred, like a meticulous record. I wasn't setting a trap. I was simply following the natural course of consequences. Then came the day she made her biggest mistake. I returned home to find her tossing a small kitchen appliance across the living room, glass shattering on the floor. I calmly photographed the damage and sent the evidence to the landlord. She realized immediately that her attempts at intimidation had backfired. For the first time, she understood that I wasn't going to cave. Her choices had tangible consequences. Meanwhile, my life with Elena continued to flourish. We shared dinners, coffee runs, walks in the park, and late-night talks about everything from work to dreams to favorite movies. Each time my roommate saw me happy, independent, and fulfilled, her frustration deepened. She had created a life for herself where she thought she could manipulate and control me indefinitely. That illusion had shattered completely. It didn't take long for her to hit rock bottom. The guy she had been secretly pursuing had no interest in a serious relationship. Her part-time salary couldn't cover her expenses. Friends began drifting away, tired of constant drama and complaining. She was forced to sell her car, break the lease, and eventually move back in with her parents. Financially depleted and socially isolated. The life she had taken for granted, a life she had assumed I would support endlessly, was gone. Through it all, I stayed factual, calm, and unbending. I wasn't malicious. I wasn't cruel. I simply respected boundaries, enforced consequences, and let her experience the natural fallout of her choices. Karma did the rest. By the time I signed the lease on my new apartment with Elena, I was free. Free from manipulation, free from control, free from the toxic dynamic that had drained me for so long. We split everything 50-50ths, communicated openly, respected each other, and enjoyed the simple beauty of being actual partners. The lesson was clear: if you tell someone they're just a roommate, don't be surprised when they start acting like one. And if you gamble with someone's trust and loyalty, don't be shocked when karma catches up. The morning of the final month of our lease dawned crisp and clear. I sipped my coffee, my mind already scanning the calendar, thinking about movers, boxes, and the new apartment Elena and I had found. Everything was ready, except for one thing. My former girlfriend still clinging to the illusion that she had power over me. She didn't realize that power had been gone for weeks, ever since she had declared we were just roommates. Every late-night tantrum, every attempt to guilt me, every passive-aggressive note left in the apartment, all of it had been cataloged, recorded, and dismissed. I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I simply lived my life, roommates. That word alone had more authority than any threat, any manipulation, any plea. She had tried everything in the past few weeks, crying, begging, seduction attempts, even threats. But every single tactic had failed. I didn't need to chase her approval. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to justify my choices. I only needed to respect the truth. She herself had declared we were roommates. By mid-month, the consequences of her actions became painfully obvious. Rent and utilities had piled up. Her car was gone. Her friends had begun drifting away, tired of the constant chaos. And the guy she had been secretly seeing, he had disappeared the moment he realized she had no real interest in a relationship. She was simply juggling options, and he wasn't one of them. The day of the move arrived. Movers came early, and I supervised efficiently. Watching as my possessions were packed and loaded, she hovered in the background, Unsure how to react, her eyes darted nervously between me and the moving truck. She had assumed I would negotiate, plead, or at least hesitate. She had assumed I would remain trapped by the emotional manipulation she had perfected. But I didn't. I moved forward calmly, deliberately, and with no apologies. "Really doing this?" she asked, her voice a mix of incredulity and fear. "Yes," I said. "You made your choices. Now live with the consequences." She didn't know what to say. She wanted to scream, to beg, to manipulate. But I had built walls of logic and boundaries she couldn't breach. Roommates. That word echoed in her mind, sharp and inescapable. Once the movers had gone, I did a final walkthrough. The apartment felt empty. But for the first time in years, it felt like freedom. I had cleared space not just physically, but emotionally. Elena was waiting at my new apartment, helping unpack boxes, laughing at my bad jokes, making pancakes, and simply enjoying life. Every moment with her contrasted sharply with the tension and chaos I had left behind. As I settled into my new routine, I began to hear about my former roommate's downfall. She had broken the lease, forfeited her deposit, moved back in with her parents, and was struggling to cover her basic expenses. Her social circle had contracted dramatically, her work options had been limited, and she had no one to manipulate, guilt, or control. Every choice she had made to treat me as a convenience had returned to her tenfold. Karma, in its slow but relentless way, had done its work. Meanwhile, my life with Elena blossomed. We split expenses evenly, communicated openly, respected each other's time and space, and nurtured a relationship built on mutual trust and care. It was everything the previous relationship had never been. And it was simple, beautiful in its simplicity. Months later, I ran into my former roommate at a local cafe. She looked disheveled, exhausted, and defeated. She glanced at me, eyes wide, searching for some remnant of the connection we had shared. But I had nothing to give her. I smiled politely, nodded, and walked past, hand in hand with Elena. I didn't gloat. I didn't taunt. I simply existed in my own happiness, my own life, my own boundaries firmly in place. The universe had handled the rest. From that point on, my life was uncomplicated. Every expense was fair, every decision shared, every relationship mutual. Elena and I thrived. My former roommate, she learned, in the hardest way possible, that manipulating others, exploiting loyalty, and treating someone as a mere convenience comes with consequences. The final lesson was clear, and it was beautifully simple. If you tell someone they are just a roommate, don't be surprised when they act like one. If you gamble with someone's trust, don't be shocked when karma catches up. And if you respect yourself, your boundaries, and your choices, life rewards you with freedom, respect, and genuine love. By the time the chapter of that toxic relationship fully closed, I was living in a bright apartment, laughing with someone who truly wanted to be with me, and finally free. Karma had not been vengeful, it had been fair, and that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.